Veg Fest, and I am here with co-founder of the event, Gwyn Whittaker of GreenFare Organic Cafe. And we're really, really excited to be here today. We have some, I think, very, very timely topics to discuss. And we've got Chuck Carroll here with us as well from the Exam Room Podcast, which is a feature of PCRM, the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. So welcome, you guys. And this first segment really is about the two of you, and specifically Gwyn. And we really want people to know more about what Gwyn is doing here in Northern Virginia and why it's so unique, and why I think as someone who's plant-based or vegan, but specifically health-focused, whole food plant-based, why you want to make a pilgrimage over to Northern Virginia in the near future. So take it away.
All right. Well, let's just kind of dive right in here, shall we? Hi, I am Chuck Carroll from the Physicians Committee. I host the Exam Room Podcast, so I'm really, really excited to be here with you. Before we actually start going with the interview, I wanted to have Gwyn come on and just kind of give some introductory remarks and welcome everybody here, because she is really the organizer behind this. She put all of her time and her effort and her energy into putting this event together, and it's just an incredible story. I can't wait to do the full interview where we can really get into it. But Gwyn, if you have any brief intro remarks, I would love to hear from you.
Sure. Thanks, Chuck. First, I want to thank you and the Exam Room Podcast for allowing us to host this virtually. It's not just me. It's been a team of people that have been working since last August to work on this second Fairfax Veg Fest. So I want to thank those people. Pericles Silva, who's with me at GreenFare Organic Cafe, Mike Young, who's my co-partner in making this happen, John Foster, who's been a GreenFare active GreenFare ambassador, Pat Barton, who does our sound and staging, Marsha Peters, Terry Siggins, Denise Young, and Ruth Mulcairn have all been getting together on a monthly basis and spending hours of their time to bring you a fantastic program today. When this episode started toward the end of February, we started thinking about how to adapt, and the first thing was canceling the event. And then the second thought was, okay, how do we make lemons out of lemonade and maybe get it to a broader audience? So I reached out to Chuck Carroll from Exam Room Podcast at PCRM, and he had recorded a lot of the speakers from last year and did interviews. So he was very gracious in accommodating us. So each of these segments with the doctors and the animal organizations today is going to be rehosted on the Exam Room Podcast for future reference. So if you missed today, then you can re-listen or listen for the first time on Exam Room Podcasts. So I'm excited to be with Mike and bringing this hopefully educational and interesting day's events to you. And I have to note that it's a gorgeous day out today. The first Fairfax Veg Fest, I remember it was cloudy and windy, and the clouds parted during the middle of the day. I guess when we started the event, the clouds sort of opened, so we knew the gods were with us. And today it's beautiful out, so hopefully people will still be watching during the day and learn something.
I'm sure that they will. I mean, this is an event too good to pass up. You look at who's going to be coming on later today. You've got Dr. Neil Barnard coming up at 10:45. A little bit later on in the day, you've got Dr. Baxter Montgomery. He's got a heck of a story. He's actually treating patients with COVID-19 down at his home practice using diet and supplements. I can't wait to dive into that with him. And plus, you've got Dr. Michael Greger. T. Colin Campbell is here. Nelson Campbell is here. Gene Bauer is going to be here. I mean, this is an all-day extravaganza that I'm just so honored and feel so privileged to be able to be a part of. But Gwyn, you are up first. So let's kind of dive right into this interview. I'm going to record it just as if this were an episode of the Exam Room that we've done a number of times in the past. You're an old pro at this. But I think it's so important that we also share your story again, because this is really a personal mission for you. So with that said, I will say welcome to the Exam Room Podcast, brought to you by the Physicians Committee and the virtual Fairfax Veg Fest. This is an event like unlike any other that we've ever been a part of. I'm so proud to be here. So big thank yous to GreenFare Organic Cafe, a plant-based diet.org, Mom's Organic Market, and the Evolution Vegan Academy. I mean, all of these great sponsors coming together to put together this particular festival, which, I mean, there was a lot of doubt. We see veg fests across the country being canceled because of the circumstances that we're in with COVID-19, the outbreak. But Gwyn Whittaker, my guest at this time, she said, no way, we're going to do this thing and we're just going to bring it online. And lo and behold, what do we have? We have the virtual Fairfax Veg Fest, which, I mean, this is a unique concept. So I really think, Gwyn, that we're onto something here.
I think everybody's trying to adapt these days.
No doubt about it. And you talked about this a little bit when you were giving your introductory remarks, but this was really an effort to kind of pull everything together and not just kind of let everything go by the wayside. How many hours have you spent over the last month really still trying to put together this incredible festival? Because even though it's online and we don't have tents and booths and vendors and things like that, it still took up a heck of a lot of time.
We've had a committee, as I mentioned, that's been together since August, and a huge amount of time goes into this orchestration. You know, I think anyone who attended last year had a blast for a first year event, and having almost 5,000 people there, you know, with bands and cooking demos and great speakers. This year we had planned to add kids zone. So all these things were going to be rolling into 2021 Fairfax Veg Fest. And so I think the planning will not go to waste. We've put a lot of things in place that'll even make it better next year. So I'm excited to keep this on track and, you know, roll with the times and, you know, hopefully get the information out to people that are trying to optimize their health, especially during this time.
And I think that that's key. It's still getting this information out. This is a very personal thing for you, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But let's go back to getting to where we are today, because I'm curious, like, how your feelings were when we started inching closer to that possibility that, yeah, we're going to have to make some serious changes to today. Like, was there a lot of disappointment or apprehension, or did you just know from day one that this thing was going to happen one way or another? What kind of emotions were you feeling?
Oh gosh, it's really been a roller coaster. I think probably the initial reaction, probably like a lot of businesses, you know, running GreenFare Organic Cafe, I think my initial reaction was fear, to be really honest, because you start thinking about, are customers going to come out, or am I going to lose employees? You know, is the business going to go under? We've been working, you know, Pericles and I and our team for 4.5 years at this educational restaurant, GreenFare. And so I think the fear aspect definitely set in, and the sort of coincidence of the Fairfax Veg Fest, it made sense initially. I think we were probably one of the first organizations to cancel the Veg Fest and to close the restaurant for in-house dining, because I could see where things were going and knew that we had to transition quickly to be a leader in safety and health of our customers and employees. So we did that. The second thing, I think after fear sort of comes, okay, the game has changed. So how do we change our game? How do we change the rules that we're operating by? And so that's, like, if you get hit with a punch, then you learn to come back. And so I think that's, you know, as far as the GreenFare restaurant, we started, you know, I started communicating with customers. I had started a nonprofit about 6 months ago, and that's been pretty cool. So we've had a lot of people give donations. We've started doing twice a week donations to medical workers, and then just this week to food pantries. We started with a small group of people, Keith Black, Melissa Mangeli, and Dr. Khan, a mask making effort. And we've got orders for over 20,000 masks now that we're making through the GreenFare Health and Wellness. And thanks to Marcia Peters, has been a volunteer with that activity. So we're doing a lot of things to not only keep the restaurant going, but also to be proactive in supporting needs in the community.
For sure. And I remember when you were telling me about the mask making effort, I was just blown away. I mean, you guys have made how many hundreds of masks at this point?
Monday we'll have delivered 6,000 in 3
Wow.
weeks.
Wow.
So we've got like 50 people that are making masks, some volunteers, which has been fantastic. And then the goal had been to create a sustainable platform where people are actually getting paid for doing this full time, getting paid a living, actually better than a living wage for making masks. So we've got a crew of people that are picking up these kits at GreenFare. We had a huge amount of donated fabric from Michael's, and the team of people that I'm working with has been really great to focus on this very intense effort in a really short amount of time.
Gosh, that's fantastic. And I'm also curious how you feel being the founder of GreenFare, the owner of it, knowing so COVID-19 is still so new that we don't have a whole lot of data about that specifically, but we are able to connect the dots on a lot of things. And one of the things that we're learning is that if you have a comorbidity, whether that's high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, any number of things really, your risk for COVID-19 just jumps dramatically. And I know that at GreenFare, health obviously is at a premium. So just being part of that restaurant, being the leader of that restaurant, you have to feel really, really good about the food, that nutritious food that you're putting out into the community, knowing at this point that food truly is medicine.
So I'm on the President's Council for PCRM. And the thing that I love about that organization is their cancer on breast cancer for prevention. It's not early detection or treatment like a lot of the other organizations are focused on and collecting large amounts of money for research, but it's really on things that you can do personally to prevent these things from happening. So it has to do with plant-based diet, maintain a healthy weight, exercise, and no alcohol. And if you think about what Dean Ornish says, that what you're doing for one disease is the same as all chronic diseases, that it makes sense that a plant-based diet and healthy weight and exercise and no alcohol are the same things that you can do to protect and boost your immune system, because it's all about inflammation. And when you're eating, especially a whole food plant-based diet, and we do the organic thing. We're one of the few, maybe half dozen restaurants in the country that have gone through the organic certification. It's like the more that you learn about food and how it's produced, and with the goal for us being that our food is promoting optimal health, that it made a lot of sense to put those two things together: whole food plant-based diet and organic produce that's going into the food.
I want to ask a little bit about your personal story, because I think that what brought you opening that restaurant and obviously got you here today, being such a critical part of the virtual Fairfax Veg Fest here, it's a heck of a story that needs to be told. And did you grow up at all eating a plant-based diet? What was your diet like, as young Gwyn was progressing into adulthood?
So I grew up in the South, and we had probably typical Southern food. I was a really picky eater as a little kid, and I think I like the pizza crust, but not the cheese. And I would pick around things. I think I'm going to talk with Cortland Malloy a little bit later today. I disliked peas pretty much through my 30s, so that's been something to overcome. And I think I always cared about health, but I remember probably in my early teens connecting eating, especially beef, with an animal that I loved. And so I think early on I stopped eating beef and pushed that to the side. And then in my 20s, I stopped eating poultry. So I consider myself sort of it was probably gradual vegetarian, and kind of clinging to the thought that you need protein to thrive, and you need calcium for your bones, from milk. And so the classic myths, I think, that are in our society today. And what I found, I think, as I started taking things out, that I started feeling better, and the health conditions that I had in my 20s kind of disappeared. So instead of getting sicker as I aged, I actually got healthier. And so that's been a pretty cool transition.
All right, how many people can say that got healthier as I aged? I mean, that's just remarkable. I'm curious. So, in your 20s, when you were really starting to make these changes, like, were you doing any sort of independent study, or was it all trial and error on your own? Like, hey, well, you know what? I want to take dairy out of my diet, or I want to take eggs out of my diet. Like, what was the connection there? Like, was that all you, or were you spending time in the library?
I think that during that period of time, it was more based on recognition of animal awareness, and it was compassion for animals. And I think until I grew up at the beach, so I grew up catching fish, and I think I had lingering in my mind that ethically, since I used to fish, and that I was sort of eating what I caught. But I remember reading maybe 8 or 9 years ago about the ethics of food, and how fish are caught in the big nets today, and the fish pollution in fish farms. And I couldn't reconcile that anymore, and so I took that out. And that was about the same time that I watched Forks Over Knives and really connected what I was eating with my health, because they were sort of parallel paths before. And it's sort of similar. If you read the Washington Post, there's one section on food and there's one section on health, and they're not coupled. And so, it takes, I think, a more global perspective to start putting these things together. This whole thing about the pandemic, it's, if you look at any time you're concentrating animals, you're going to have the sort of problems that we have, with everything from smallpox and influenza and Ebola and COVID-19, to the state of commingling human animals on the cruise ships, or in the place where it's been the worst in New York City, where you have these vertical cruise ships of the high-rise buildings, where they tell people to stay home. And it's like you're in this confined space with the same ventilation system and the same elevators. And so there are going to be disasters, because it's a concentrated feeding activity within these buildings. And so I think just for me, putting together the health and the animal compassion made so much sense, and then starting to couple that with the environmental impact was sort of a trifecta.
It's so funny. I always say people go vegan for one of three reasons. It's either the animals, the environment, or their health, but inevitably you get involved in all three. It's almost impossible not to, right?
Yeah, it's a progression of thinking, I think. And you get sort of ingrained with what you're taught growing up. And I think we touched sort of briefly on our last podcast with, I lost a partner to heart disease, and his family, his mother and father both died of heart disease. And so, when he lost his life at 50 years old, I thought that it was genetic. And you just sort of pass that off as genetic. And I look today at 800,000 people a year dying in the United States of heart disease. That's 3,000 people a day. And we haven't stopped the economy for that. We haven't sent people home because it's normalized. It's like the health industry has learned to basically manufacture ways to keep people going with heart disease, and to process people in this path of propping them up so they can continue living and continue paying the bills, while they're still sick. And
Mhm.
so it'll be really interesting to me to see the lessons that people take away from, from this episode, pandemic.
And you mentioned that you lost a significant other to this, and how much of a role was that in your determination to open up GreenFare and just push all the chips to the middle of the table and go all in on trying to bring forward this education and this awareness? How important of a turning point was that for you?
Well, people have asked, how long have you dreamed of opening a restaurant? And it was really since May that year that he died. It was something I'd never considered. I was in the tech space for 35 years and ran a company in that space that did IT strategy. We put the first cloud computer at CIA. So I had a team of professional people that were focused in IT strategy after focused in counterterrorism after 9/11. But the impact of I think Tony's death sort of clarified my thinking after I watched Forks Over Knives. And Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn and Colin Campbell, who have been doing this for 60 years now, were the inspiration for me contemplating that for me to offer the education that I had gained from them would be a game changer. And so Nelson Campbell with Plant Pure Nation, I supported his film Plant Pure Nation, where they were doing these 10-day kickstarts, actually jump starts down in North Carolina. And so I did one of those in Reston. Colin Campbell supported me and Nelson. And we had 45 people that changed their diet for just 10 days. And I watched the dramatic transition that people had in just 10 days of eating differently. And for me as an engineer, I had no concept that your body can rebound so quickly from chronic diseases that have taken decades to accumulate. Hypertension, high cholesterol, diabetes, and obesity. And when you change the food, people recover really quickly. It's really a miracle. It's the miracle of food, a plant-based diet. And so the opportunity not only to offer this in the restaurant, but also to offer the speakers. And every month we do the PCRM Kickstart at GreenFare, where we do in-person, online classes right now, but actually give people food to take home to make it easy for people to follow the diet. It's been really amazing experience to interview people as they come in and pick up their food and see how quickly they've recovered from everything from, people that have spent their whole life with asthma, 4 days later, they come in and they're like, first time I can breathe in my life, reversing congestive heart failure in 21 days, people that would have gone through these major surgeries, and just by changing their diet, taking things out of their diet that were causing harm, their bodies sprang back to health. So,
And that has to be so gratifying for you to watch, especially given the loss of Tony. I'm not trying to open up old wounds, but I would just think, like, here you are with the opportunity to, literally save the lives of these other people. And this is something that you yourself have put together. I would imagine that you have to feel just this extraordinary sense of accomplishment when you see people who are able to have these dramatic changes with their health.
yeah, it's been interesting to me that it was the path that was sort of laid out to me. I'm a big believer in synchronicity. And so, I started sometimes, reaching out to people. So Colin Campbell gave me time to talk with me, and Keith Black, who was my partner. He came up with the first menu for GreenFare, and meeting Pericles Silva, who was from Whole Foods and Reston. So all of these people kind of came into my life at the right time to allow the pieces to be put together for GreenFare Organic Cafe and really make it work. And I think customer receptivity was strong. I mean, we've had people from around the country that come in, and they say that we're their mecca. We're so different than any other restaurant because we're really focused on helping people to regain their health. Any other restaurant, if you eat there over time, you're going to get high blood pressure and you're going to gain weight. And if you come into GreenFare and eat there all the time, you're going to, our customers are going to look the best, coming and going. And so that's kind of a cool thing.
And I can say this firsthand, traveling so often, that you are absolutely right, that there are no other restaurants in the country that I've been able to find that put as much of a focus on health as GreenFare does, whether they be plant-based or just have plant-based options. I mean, you guys really do set the gold standard here.
Yeah, it's been really cool to watch our customer base grow and have a recognition of the programs that we're offering, that they can take advantage of to continue their journey. So, not only do I have speakers in health, we've had some pretty cool things on the environment. We had a speaker on how to put geothermal system in your house. We've had, before all of this happened, we had a lady that talked about putting native plants in your yard. How do you get more connected with your, instead of growing monocrop lawns that you're dumping fertilizer and cutting with oil burning lawnmowers, how do you put native plants in your yard that don't need watering and that are going to attract pollinators, and maybe even put some food in your yard so you can actually eat things on your own property. It's similar to the victory gardens that that we had during World War II. I'm starting a project in my neighborhood. I've been with the time off, speaking with a respectful distance with my neighbors about doing blueberry bushes, so you can start connecting what you put in your yard to, if you're eating food there, then you're less inclined to spray everything with pesticides. And so getting the kids especially connected to the food, I think, is a really cool thing.
Wow, a blueberry bush. That's awesome. When all of this is over, I'm totally coming over and I'm going to pick a couple blueberries. I hope you don't mind.
Absolutely. That's the purpose.
Let's talk a little bit more about the program that you're offering at GreenFare, the 21-day kickstart. I remember one of the things that you told me initially was that the meals that are supplied for this, they're not small little meals. This isn't a gimmick diet. The last thing you want is to feel like you're hungry, because I always believe, being a former overweight guy and having tried to diet so many times previously, I knew that when I wasn't hungry, I was in trouble. But I think that you told me that almost all of your meals weigh out to be 1 pound of food. That's a pretty hefty portion.
So Barbara Roll's research showed that with a pound of food that's got fiber and water, you're going to feel full. And it's that feeling of satiety that Doug Lisle talks about in Pleasure Trap, that the food industry recognizes if they take out fiber or they take out water, that people are going to eat a lot more calories. They're going to buy a lot more food. So things like raisins, if you take out the water, and raisins are grapes, then you have concentrated calories. And so you can eat a lot more when you don't have fiber and water. So because ours are whole plant, you actually get a pound that it includes the fiber, which is great for your microbiome. That's what the bacteria in your system actually feed on the fiber. And and water is the hydration that your body needs to actually get the food through your system. So a lot of conditions that the standard American diet provides, I think, is digestive problems, and usually 3 or 4 days on our food, and a lot of those issues tend to resolve themselves.
What about the people who come in and they're really maybe a little bit apprehensive? Maybe their significant other has dragged them in the door. What kind of a turnaround do you see with them as far as opening their eyes to a whole new way of eating? And how long does it take before they're like, wow, this is nothing what I thought it would be. This is awesome. How long is it between, day one and the time when they're all in on this?
Usually it's a couple of days where people get through this food is different than what I'm used to. And I usually set expectations really low the first week, that you're gonna hate the food for the first 3 to 4 days because you're really resetting your taste buds, and you're gonna think the food is bland, and you're gonna think the food isn't what you're expecting it to be. And the second week that people are on the program, they usually say, you've started adding spices to the food, or this is actually pretty good. And with the meals that we prepare, it's 43 different meals over 21 days. And so people get a lot of variety, and they can spice it up if they want with hot sauce or add a little bit of salt. But we as a restaurant don't use added salt, oil, and sugar. And that's probably the third. In addition to being plant-based and organic, we do something called an SOS-free diet, so no salt, oil, and sugar. And that's like the epitome of food as medicine. And sometimes medicine doesn't always taste that great, but I can tell you that usually after the first week that people do it and they experience the health benefits,
Oh, yeah.
feeling better overcomes the initial challenge of going through a taste change.
Well, here's what I can tell you of being a former 420-pound man is that some of the food there, yeah, I would say it would have been bland to me at the time. But then I'm flipping through the menu as you're saying this, and I'm literally, my mouth is starting to water. The organic Thai quinoa bowl that you serve is something that even in my heyday of fast food, I would have gravitated to this because it is so, so delectable. And I also see that and the chili, your veggie chili is just, it's all planet. Like there can be no other with this. Like it is just the most incredible thing. And so, and it gets so exciting to me when I look at this menu and I know like how flavorful these foods will be once that adjustment is made. Your taste buds get refined, as I like to call it. And then not only are you like pleasuring your palate, but you're really just fueling your body with A+ kinds of food here. And it can just get you off of medicines. It can fill your belly. Like it is truly the greatest thing in the entire world as far as I'm concerned.
And you neglected our muffins and desserts. We have a baker right now, Jen Graydon, who's really awesome. And our muffins are made with oat flour. They're sweetened with dates, so we don't use simple sugars. And if you get the muffins, people get addicted to those.
It's easy to see what are the gosh, what is the do you have like a sweet potato bar or some sort of a bar that's in your desserts?
We actually, one of the things that we've noticed in the shopping aisles are that there's the cookies are missing. A lot of the junk food is missing. So my challenge to Pericles and Jen last week was we need to come up with a healthy cookie so people have they get their cookie fix. So next week we just did trial runs, and I get to do the taste testing. So next week we'll be introducing cookies along with our muffins.
You get to do the taste test. That's a hard job, but somebody's got to do it, right?
It's like the hair club for men. I'm a member.
That's awesome. That's so great. Just a couple of minutes left. And I just want to take the time to express my gratitude to you. One, for asking me to participate in the event this year, but two, just introducing me to GreenFare and this restaurant that is way more than a restaurant. To me, it's a library, it's an education center, it's a place where literally you can change your life. It is so much more, it is all encompassing. And the fact that this is your brainchild and I consider you to be my friend. Like that to me is just, it's extraordinary. And to know that you are part of my life and are doing this much good in the world with this restaurant and this Veg Fest, like Gwen, seriously, you are one of the most remarkable people I have ever met in my entire life.
Yeah, thank you, Chuck. I have to give a lot of credit to Mike Young with the, he's doing Veg Fest up and down the East Coast. And I think all of the leaders in nutrition that I've been able to reference is my heroes. So they've been toiling for decades in this, and this has been, I think 4.5 years for me with the restaurant. And it's always, where do we take it from here? How do we get more people with this knowledge and how good they can feel by making some simple changes to their diet? So I'm always looking for a way to make it happen bigger and faster and better.
All right, well, I can't wait to speak with you again and to taste test those cookies. I'm sure my wife would like to do that as well. So have a blast with that. Please keep us updated on how the cookies are progressing, because my goodness gracious, I think a lot of people are going to be interested. And here's a pro tip. If you're watching this and you're not in the Washington, D.C. area, whenever you come to the D.C. area, you want to make sure that you fly into Dulles Airport, because then really right on your way to the city is GreenFare. It is a hop, skip, and a jump off of the Dulles Toll Road, which you'll have to take to get from the airport. And this is your number one stop. You know, you don't have to go to the National Mall. Yes, the monuments are great, but I'm telling you, the greatest thing in DC is GreenFare. So it is right by Dulles Airport. So if you are coming into the DC area, that is the place that you want to fly into. And then boom, go directly to GreenFare, and it will cure what ails you, guaranteed. Gwyn Whittaker, thank you so very much for your time today. You are just an extraordinary person once again, and it has been an honor to speak with you this morning.
Thanks very much, Chuck. So GreenFare is in Herndon, Virginia, and you can follow us at greenfare.com. I do a newsletter with all our speakers and events. And again, thanks, Chuck, for having me on, and the podcast, Exam Room Podcast, for all you do with the education.
It is my dream job, just as the restaurant is for you. So thank you very much, Gwyn. And you watching at home, don't go anywhere. Coming up at 10:45, I'll be speaking with the one and only Dr. Neil Barnard. Stick around. This is the virtual Fairfax Veg Fest.